Good morning. I want to spend a little bit of time talking with you about how to read academic articles. We're going to read an article titled Borders on the Mind, Reframing Border Thinking. And one of the things that you should notice is that this article is actually not from the humanities related fields. Instead, it's from a journal called Ethics and Global Politics, which is more of a social sciences field. But we're going to read this and then we're going to apply it in the humanities. I want to give you kind of 3 suggestions for ways to think about academic articles. I'm going to scroll down so that I have a little bit of space to write. The first thing is that in academic writing, there's always one point if it's well written. The author is really trying to say one thing and only one thing, and everything else in the work supports that. The scope of the one point depends on the size. Or maybe it's better to say that the scope determines the size. So an academic article that is 5 pages long probably makes one point, but it's not a particularly huge point. Whereas an academic book is going to be making a much broader kind of a point about something, and all of the chapters in it will work together to support that. Second thing, this sounds elementary, but pay attention to topic sentences. They're going to be the keys that guide you through the author's thinking, kind of the signposts along the road that's going to help you to know where you're going and how you're getting there. Third thing that you want to think about is the conversation. In an academic article, the author is often talking to other people. You'll have to forgive my stick figures here, they're not terribly good. And he'll tell you who those other people are and why he thinks their points are important. And it's in that conversation that we start to understand what it is that the writer is trying to say. So what I would like to do is to kind of walk you through the first part of this article, and then I will let you all take the second and third parts. So on the first page of an article, there are a couple of useful pieces of information that often will be here. You may get some information about the author. We see that John Agnew is in the Department of Geography at UCLA. That should give you some confidence in what he has to say. He's an expert in this field. You will also often find an abstract, and the abstract summarizes. And when we talk about that one main point, usually if there's an abstract, that's going to be stated in the abstract. So you might want to read that pretty carefully. Don't rely on it. Don't just read the abstract and not the rest of the article. If it's something that is assigned for class, you can certainly use the abstract if you're doing your own research to determine whether you need to read the article or not. So in this article, one of the things the thing that John Agnew is interested in is borders. And he doesn't tell us straight up what he's arguing. Instead, he introduces us to the conversation. You can see here there are 2 very different but prevalent ways in which we tend to think about borders. That's the conversation. How do we talk about borders? And then he outlines them for us. 1, borders are simply facts on the ground. They exist for a lot of practical reasons, and they can be classified according to the purposes they serve. Great. Now remember what I said about topic sentences and the conversation. The next topic sentence, from a very different perspective, there's your signpost. Here is the second way of thinking about borders. Borders are artifacts of dominant discursive processes that have led to the fencing off of chunks of territory and people from one another. So they are artificial, they separate us from each other, and as he points out here, in this way of thinking, you pretty quickly get to the idea that borders are unnecessary. There's your conversation. Now we keep going. What if, although still necessary for all sorts of reasons, borders are also inherently problematic? What I have in mind is not so much defining a via media, and this means middle way, between the 2 sides, but reframing the border question in practical and ethical terms in such a way that moves beyond the simple either-or stipulation of the current debate. So you can see what he's done here. This is my purpose. A middle way. And he continues with this to say that we need to think about the way that we talk about borders. We need to see them as something that is not just fixed or not just something to be overcome, but as an evolving construction. So the meaning of borders is constantly going to be changing. And from his perspective, from Agnew's perspective, that is not necessarily a bad thing. In fact, that's how we should be thinking about borders. And as he goes on, he outlines for us the implications. And then he wants to acknowledge the two different ways of thinking. And right here, in fact, he gives you an outline of the rest of the article. First, I want to do this, say a few words about why borders matter. Then, I want to briefly address the dominant arguments about why they are problematic. Finally, I will suggest a few ways in which we can move beyond the dialogue of the depth between these two approaches to thinking about borders. The point is to encourage both sides to see something positive in the other and to show how they can begin to do so. Again, kind of a restatement of purpose. So what I'm going to ask you to do now is to continue reading the article, to continue marking it up, and to remember that within each section there is going to be kind of a single subpoint. And what I would like for you to do is to read, to think about what those subpoints are, to think about how all of this ties together, and then finally we're going to apply this to see how Agnew might think about the film that we're going to watch together. Good luck with it. Get in touch with me either on Zoom or by email if you have questions, and I look forward to hearing what you say about the film that we're going to watch together.